Hello, welcome. It's Pauline from PQW and I've got some exciting things to show you today. We're going to do some woven wall art. Now this is a great way of using up your scraps of fabric. If you've got a lot of fabric in that cupboard that you need to get rid of, let's help you bust that stash. And I thought, why not do some wall art, because we can just do some amazing things with it. I'm going to show you very basic stuff, but it comes out absolutely fabulous. So behind me, you're going to see two little samples that I've made, and I had so much fun making these because there's no sewing. How good is that? All we're going to do is make our strips of fabric. Once we've chosen the colours, make your strips of fabric up. They're all folded, and of course, yes, I'm going to use my sasha tools. And then we're going to just weave, and it's amazing what you're going to come up with. And I think whenever you make something like this, you're going to come up with a different idea each time. So they make wonderful, wonderful gifts if you want to make something for your family. They could be a memory chart. You could put photos in of your family in between the weaving. You can use them for business card holders, Christmas card holders. You could use them for anything. But let's have a look. So I've chosen, when I started this one, I had this fabulous piece of fabric that I really, really loved, and I thought I want to use that. So from that piece of fabric, I chose all of these coordinating planes that would go with it, so it would make this one stand out. But I only had a fat quarter. So once I cut the strips that I needed for this one, I had nothing left to do the second one. So I thought, why do we need to add that fabric? Let's just use the coordinating fabrics and make it work together. And I kind of like it. And I'm going to make the third one in this lesson for you so that you can see how you can just keep adding for it. So when I've done this one, I've chosen to use this little bit of, it's a pinky apricot-y colour, but it just didn't work in here. So when I've done this second one, I brought that little bit of colour just into it to just give that bit of lightness, because this one was giving me some light shadings. And so I just popped it in here. It does have a fair bit of green in here, but when I started putting the green in this one, it just didn't work because it just wasn't in that colour blend. So just work with your colours, play with them a bit. If you've got to purchase your own fabrics, well, once you go and get your feature fabric, you can then start pulling other fabrics that we're going to coordinate with that. So let's just talk about the tools that we're going to use. Obviously, I've got a canvas board. Now, you can buy these all different sizes. This one here is one of the ones I've used, and I've written the sizes on the back so I can remember them. This one here is 12 inches wide by 24 inches long. If you work in metric measurements, it's 30.5 centimetres by 61 centimetres. So we just take the cover off it and we use the raw canvas to weave straight onto. And I thought that would be the simplest way and the cheapest way for us to make this wall up. Then, you just choose the different sizes. This one that I'm going to work on in this lesson, it's a 12-inch square, or other words, a 30 centimetre square. I'm going to use the sasha collection. Now, if you've been using our sasha tools in the past, you'll notice this one is now packaged differently. We've done that for a lot of reasons. We've done it for easy shipping. We've done it for continuity. We've changed the colours to allow you to know which colour you're going to use for what process. And our original set only ever had 10 in it. Well, this one now has 12 different sizes in it, and we just think they're the most popular 12 out of our range of, I think it's 21 or 22 different sizes we do. So you can watch a lot of our other videos to see all the other uses for these tools. So we're going to use the sasha tools. You're going to need a ruler, obviously, to cut your fabric and to get all your measurements right. I love to use my 12 by 6 inch ruler. You possibly might need a marking pen, but it's not essential. But if you do, I use the Bohan fabric markers. We're going to need some masking tape. We're going to need a staple gun if you have one of those. If you don't have a staple gun, the masking tape will suffice you. Of course, you'll need a good pair of sharp scissors. This is the most important thing. The Roxanne glue based it, because this is what's going to hold everything in place for you forever and a day. If you want to remove some of the strips once you've glued it down, you're going to be able to do that just by putting a damp cloth on it. That will dissolve the glue. And then I'm going to use either a Hera marker or maybe I'll use both the tools, and a tapered tailor's awl. So they're the tools, basic tools that we're going to start with, and you can get all of those tools from our website, which is www.pqw.com.au. So now, let's get started. So I'm going to put all these tools aside because I don't need the staple gun in this lesson, but we'll be using it in the second part of this lesson, because I am going to do it as a two-part lesson because it's just too much information for one session. You'll need time to digest what I do first up and then come back and do the second lesson. So I'll put all this product aside and we're going to start talking about our fabrics. We'll put this one aside, we don't need that. So what we're going to do first, I'm going to work on this 12-inch square or 30 centimetre square. I've cut a piece of fabric that's going to cover this board. So what I've done is, when we flip it over, you need to cut your fabric to cover your board about 3 inches bigger to give you enough to turn it over. So if you lay your piece of fabric out on the cutting table and just measure, it doesn't have to cover the timber completely, but if you want to cover the timber completely, cut it a bit bigger. You no need to worry about the raw edges because we're going to cover that raw edge with masking tape eventually. But if that does fuss you, you can always cut it larger again and turn a little hem under. You could hem it on the machine if you wanted to, but I don't think that's necessary. Because with wall art, we don't leave it there on our wall forever. You may want to change your wall art. You may want to take this fabric off and replace it with a different style later on because, you know, we do change our decor and do all of that sort of stuff. So now I've got mine so it just covers the canvas on both sides. Now there's two ways we can do this, but I find the best way to do this to start with is use your Roxanne glue basted. Now if you've never used this before, let me tell you what a great product it is. I just love it. I use it on all my quilts I make. I use it for everything and it sticks to anything, which is fabulous. So I'm just going to put some little dots of glue along on the timber, one side, and we're going to fold it over and just hold it in place for a few seconds. It won't take long. And you notice it is seeping through, but it will dry clear. But if it doesn't, you're not going to see the back of this anyway. So we're going to now put some across here. And we're going to now need to pull this very tight. So just make sure that's glued down, because you want to stretch that backing fabric or the base fabric over your canvas very, very tight. Okay, some up the side here. So just take your time with it. It's, you know, a good idea just to sit down at your work table and do this. Okay, so we've got both sides now glued. So now we're going to work on the corners. So we're going to turn this around so you can see this. Make sure I've got it, yep, got plenty there. We're going to turn it in on the side. This is where I use the Hera marker to score that and get a nice crease into it. You know, you could take this to the ironing board and iron it, but I think that's unnecessary. We'll do the same on this side. Just score it down. Then pop some glue along here and roll it over. Because what you're looking for is getting a nice finish here on the corners. You don't want it too bulky. Just get some more glue in here. Let's get it nice and neat there. And it's really simple. You don't have to fuss too much on this. It's not like precision with when we're making a quilt or anything. It's just the back nobody will see. Once it's hanging on the wall, you know, if you're going to make it for a friend, you probably want to spend a bit of time and make it quite neat on the back. But remember, we can cover this with masking tape eventually. So we're going to do this other side now. Roll it in and score it. Do the same on this side. I just find the Hero marker a really, really handy tool. I use this marker a lot when I'm marking straight lines onto my quilt blocks, because what it does when you're marking fabric with it, it just puts a crease in the fabric, so you don't have to use a marking pencil or anything and worry about getting the marks out of your blocks. So we're just going to glue along here again. And wrap over. Oops, got a little bit too much glue there. We'll just wipe that off. And you'll get tacky fingers once it's done, but it just dries and rubs off your fingers. Some more glue up this end. Right, well that's got our board now covered. And then we're ready to start thinking about how we're going to weave this and what we're going to do. So don't forget to put your lid back on the glue, because you don't want it to dry out. And a lot of people ask me the question about the glue, what's the shelf life of it? Well, I've had some bottles of this Roxanne glue that I've had open for 20 years and it's still as good as the day that I took the cap off. So it is a great product. So let's turn this over and see how nice and tight we've got it. We've got the corners all nice, and there it is. But what I do next, just to make sure it holds there brilliantly, that's when I'm going to use the staple gun. Now these are noisy big things, but we're just going to push down and staple along the side, just to hold this onto your canvas nice and firm. Oops, doesn't want to work. My staple gun is so old. Maybe you're going to have one that's a bit easier to use than mine. This seems so strange compared to all the other stuff I do, which is all involving sewing. Okay. Oops, missed it. There you go. One more in the corner, then we're done. Just going to put one more here. Here. Right, so now we know that that's not going to shift. And I do advise doing that, because if you don't secure it down nicely, once you start the weaving process, you don't want this to stretch and move. Now, I'm going to go back to the big one on the back wall behind me. This one here, the smaller one, I put a piece of red fabric down as my base colour. This one here, I put the orange down as my base colour. I just wanted them to look a little bit different, so that's why I've chosen to do the purple as my base colour for my third one, because you'll get different colours shining through. But if you don't want to have that fabric on the background, if you think you're going to do weaving all the way across both ways and keep your strips all together, really close together, you will not need this base fabric. So you've just got to choose which way you want to do it. You might like to think about how you're going to, what your design you're going to come up with. There's no right or wrong way to do this. You know, you might like to do diagonals on this one to make it look different to those others. You might want to space them out further. You might want to do different width strips. There's so many different possibilities here. It's just endless. Like I could have cut pieces of fabric, like I could have cut a big triangle and laid down here. I could have cut 4 triangles and laid down here, and then I could have put some strips over those. So there's There's endless, endless, endless possibilities. But let me just show you some other things before I get on to preparing it for the weaving and everything. Let me just talk to you about some other things that you could make doing your weaving. These couple of little projects here, you may have seen them on our channel before, but this is a cushion cover I've made, and this is all woven. I've made the strips, but with this one I've stitched down each edge, down the side, just to give it a bit of a different ambience. Now when we do the weaving onto our wall art, when we make our strips up, we could do some stitching on the strips before we start weaving them. That's another possibility for you. So you can weave up your fabric for anything you want to do. You can weave up fabric to make bags. This one here, this is placemats that I've made, or table mats, and this is all woven. So you can see all the strips are woven. I've used different size strips, and there's no sewing in this except the binding. So it just makes it very, very easy. Very quick projects to make, a great way of using up that fabric that you've got in the stash. You know, a lot of us have a lot of fat quarters that we don't use for other things. Cut them up and weave them. Weave a basket, weave a bag, weave absolutely anything. You have so much fun with it. So now I'm going to talk about the fabrics that I've used. And as you can see, I've used all plain colours in the second one. And I'm going to use all plain colours in this one. Now, and this is where I'm going to use the sasha tools. So no matter what size tool you're going to use, you will cut your fabric double the measurement of the measurement written on top of the tool. Now, I'm going to use my old set instead of opening a new set. So all of my original set, they were made in this colour. But you'll see we've got the other colours now, and we've purposely done this because we've had a company that's copied our patent and they've stolen it and they're selling them now everywhere, much cheaper than we can ever produce them, but be aware of them. They are making them out of plastic that melts because these are going to be used against the hot iron. So you really need to make sure you've got the right ones. They are the ones produced by PQW, which is Pauline's Quilters World. So you need to make sure you've got the right ones. And that's just a little, I'm not saying it because I want you to buy ours, I'm saying it because I don't want you to waste your money. I want you to buy the right tools for the job. So I'm going to use all different sizes. So I'm going to, you could use the 2.5 inch ones, you could use the 1.5, 1.25, 1 or 1/2 inch. I think once we get up into the bigger sizes, it depends on what size wall art you're making, but if you're making weaving onto a much bigger mat board, you could probably use the 3 inch. But for my little one, that would be well too wide. So I'm just going to stick to these sizes. I may not use them all. I have to wait until I start cutting a few strips and weaving them to know which is going to be the right sizes for me to use. So be prepared to change your mind as you work through. There's nothing wrong with changing our mind. Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm going to bring my little ironing mat over. So possibly if you're working like I am on a small piece, you might like to use the little ironing surface. This is part of my work mat that we use. And I'm going to make a 1 inch strip. So I've got all my fabric pre-cut. So this is a 2 inch strip of fabric that I've got here. I don't need them terribly long because I've only got short pieces. Now when you do cut for your mat, you're going to need it the length of the board, plus you'll have to allow for the turn back. So you want to be able to come right over the edge and cover the board here and have enough so you can tuck it back in up underneath here to secure it down. But as we start the weaving, you'll see how much extra we're going to use. So this strip of fabric here gives me more than what I need, but I can trim it back later. Don't cut yourself short. before we iron these strips, I decided I'm going to show you how I use the little cutting board and how I've folded my fabric into 4 and I cut my strips. So I've got this fabric folded into 4. Now, if you're a person that has trouble folding your fabric, look on our channel because there is a great video there of me showing you how to fold your fabric so you don't get that little dog leg and that dip in it. And that's really a good lesson for you. But you only need a little short ruler. I'm going to cut this strip 3 inches wide. So I've got my 3-inch mark along the edge of the fabric. I'm going to use my little rotary cutter because I just find the little 18mm cutters are just brilliant for cutting strips, well, for cutting anything out. It's a cutter I use to make cut out all of my quilts. So you don't need to have a huge downward pressure on your ruler because we design our rulers ourselves and we engrave deep into the back of them, which gives it a rough surface. So when I put it on my fabric, it grips there and I don't have to put this hard downward pressure on. Just relax your hand on there, get your blade rolling, and you'll notice your fabric cut into 4 fits on this little cutting mat perfect. And you just keep cutting your strips. Oops, missed the end. So I didn't start the roller cutter moving close enough to the edge. So now I might want to cut some 1-inch strips off this one. So, 2 inches to make a 1-inch folded piece. And I'll cut them at the same time. Now I might want, we talked about that little tiny light piece of colour that I put in the second one I made. I cut the strips 1 inch wide for that. And I'll show you how to use that too as a little feature in the weaving. So now we'll go back to the ironing process because we've got a few strips cut. And these work boards are fantastic because you've got your cutting mat, you've got your sandpaper mat, and then you've got your ironing mat, which is super, super, super. Super handy. They're fantastic if you're working in your small work area. They're fantastic if you travel in a caravan and you like to take your sewing bits and pieces with you. They're fantastic if you're doing workshops. Just brilliant. So now with our iron, we're just going to iron the first couple of inches. Now do make sure you press that first couple of inches because if you don't, it's going to make it harder to put into the tool nice and accurate. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up from the bottom and you'll see that that inch strip now fits in that split perfect. We're going to go back down. Now we're going to pin this into our ironing surface and I like to use the double fork pin, the Clover double fork pin. Hopefully you can see that because what I want is I want equal tension on both sides of the strip of fabric so it doesn't stretch. If I use 2 separate pins I can get stretching, but if I use the double pin, as I put it in, it catches each side of that strip. So, and because it goes in together, perfect, perfect tension. So now we'll turn this board so you can see it, what I'm doing. We're going to cup up the sides. Now, I do have it asked of me often, how do you keep the strips nice and straight? People have trouble with it running off. Don't use the front of the iron. You might be tempted to use this front of the iron into that curve. If you do that, it's going to twist. You can see how it's twisting my tool, which in turn will twist the fabric. So what we do, we use the side of the iron. When we designed the tool, we designed it with 2 little peaks. Let's put it right here. 2 little peaks, there and there. Those peaks hit the side of your iron. And you just push through. Now, don't push down on your iron. It's a glide. Just let the iron push the tool and just keep coming down till you get the whole strip done. Now, after you get used to using this tool, the Sasha tools, you'll find that you're going to move the iron down there very quickly, which means sometimes on some fabrics you don't get enough heat into it to hold the crease. So if that's happening, if this wasn't folding like as neatly as what it is, or as strong as what this is to hold the crease, once you finish it, just hold it and run the iron back over it a couple of times. Get plenty of heat into the strip so that you hold that nice crease in there. So there's one strip made. Okay, so I'm going to do the wider strip now, the 3-inch wide strip. So it's going to fold in and fold in. And don't worry, if one side folds in further than the other, that's okay. Nobody's going to see the back of it. It's only you that knows that. And when you put it through the tool, the width is going to stay the same all the way through. So 3-inch strip folds down to be 1.5. We go into the 1.5-inch sasha tool. Same thing. Pin with your double pin. You know, of course you can do this on your ironing board if you've got much longer strips, but I just find working on my work table with all these little tools, it makes it so easy. If you've got a fabric that's a little bit stiffer, because you may be using some furnishing fabrics or, you know, like some silks or some satins, or you can use any fabrics to do this wall art. But if you are using a thicker fabric, like a furnishing fabric or something, and it's hard to move the tool, just tap with the iron. Just tap along. Does the same thing. And you notice our tools are not melting when I put the iron near it, unlike the people that have copied us. And there's our wider strip made, and it's so easy and it's so gratifying to just stand there and iron a lot of strips and get them all ready, and then you're ready to start doing the weaving process. But let me show you one more thing to get you excited of all the different things you can weave. We've seen the cushion cover, we've seen the table mat that I've done, but how about making something like this? And this, doing a small wall art like I'm showing you now, will give you the confidence to be able to do something like this. Like this is a hedgehog, a rug that we've made, and there is a lesson on our YouTube channel how to do this. But it is just showing you all the different things that you can weave up. As I said, the sky's the limit. You can make anything. But here I've done it on the diagonal, and you get such a different look to doing it on the straight. So you can see no stitching here. It's all just held down. Different widths. Got some wide ones coming this way, and then we've come back with thinner ones running this way. So you can go to our website now straight away, which is pqw.com.au, and you can even download this pattern. It's ready there for you now, and it's fun to make. You're going to need a backing fabric for this one. We're not working on a matte art board. We're just weaving straight onto a backing fabric, and it just makes it so easy. And all the instructions are in the pattern, step by step by step. You know how now to make your strips. You know what width to cut them. Using your tools, always double the measurement of the tool you're using, iron them up, and you can weave absolutely anything. So that's it for lesson 1. We're going to come back and show you how to do the weaving, how to finish the mat boards off or the wall art, and some other little hints and tips. So join us next time. So bye for now.